every single organism at its minute extent is made up of the cell. So the origin of life or the life begins with one single cell, and hence we call it as the basic structural fundamental unit of the life. So the first person to observe the cell was Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke, he discovered the cell in 1665, but however the cell which was discovered by Robert Hooke was a dead cell. He discovered it in the Quercus plant. So Robert Hooke, he discovered, or he first observed the cell which is a cork cell of Quercus plant. And cork is a dead tissue, right? Cork is a dead tissue. So cork cell of the Quercus plant, which is a dead cell. So the person who first observed the cell is Robert Hooke, definitely. But if in case the person who first observed the living cell is been asked, then it is not the Robert Hooke. So if the person who first observed the live cell or a living cell is Anton van Leeuwenhoek. Anton van Leeuwenhoek is the person who first observed the living cell. Okay? Now, he observed it, as I said, he was just having the hobby of making the lenses, grinding the fine lenses, and he used one such lens to see some droplets of the water in his hand. He could see something moving, and he then got to know that there are some tiny animals which can actually move, and they are not visible to our eyes. They are not visible to our naked eyes. So he named those small animals as animalcules. Animalcules, which means tiny animals. So animalcules are the tiny animals which were observed by Anton van Leeuwenhoek. Later on, it was noted that it was observed that these animalcules are nothing but the microorganisms, right? So at that time, we observed it as the animalcules. So first live cell or living cell was observed by Anton van Leeuwenhoek. So after this discovery of the cell, then comes the cell theory. So cell theory was basically given by two people, that is Schleiden and Schwann. Schleiden and Schwann. So we call it as a Schleiden and Schwann theory, right? So what exactly did Schleiden say and what did Schwann say? So Schleiden, in the year 1838, Matthias Schleiden. So he, in the year 1838, so he observed the plants. So he was a botanist and he studied the plants, and he concluded that all the plants are made up of cells and the products of the cells. All plants are made up of cells and products of the cells. Okay, so this was the observation of Matthias Schleiden in the year 1838. Then in the year 1839, it was Theodor Schwann. So he was an zoologist. However, though being a that the structural definition of the living organisms are given by the Schweden and Schwann. But they fail to explain one thing, and that is how did a cell arise? How did a cell origin? So this was not explained by Schweden and Schwann. So later on in the year 1855, okay, in the year 1855, one more scientist called Rudolf Virchow. So he comes into the picture, and then he observes that the cell arises from a pre-existing cell. So he gives a statement called as omnis cellula e cellulae. Omnis cellula e cellulae. So this is a statement which is given by Rudolf Virchow. So which clearly means that cells, or in that case all cells arise from pre-existing cells. All cells arise from pre-existing cells. So initially what happens, the Schweden and Schwann, when they put forth their observations, so combining their observations, the cell theory will be made. However, one question remains unexplained, that is how cells originate, how cells arise. So later on, when Rudolf Virchow he comes up with his observation, then finally the one cell theory breaks out, and that though Rudolf Virchow's contribution is also there in the cell theory, we usually call that cell theory is given by Schweden and Schwann. We call it as a Schweden and Schwann theory. Right? We don't consider the name of the Rudolf Virchow, but however there is a contribution of the Rudolf Virchow also in the cell theory. So finally putting together the observations of these three scientists, so the cell theory was put forth. And what does the cell theory say? The cell theory says that all the living organisms are made up of the cells. First statement, cell is a basic structural and functional unit of the life. This is the second statement. All cells arise from the pre-existing cells. This is the third statement. One statement taken by both. With one statement is a common statement from both, that is Schweden and Schwann, that is all cells, all organisms are made up of the cells. It might be plants or it might be animals. This is the first statement. Then cell is a basic structural and functional unit of the life. This is the second statement. And the third statement is all cells arise from the pre-existing cells. So these three statements together will make up the cell theory. So today's proposed cell theory is of the three statements. Clear with the cell theory? Okay.
Okay. Structure of the cell. So very basic learning, right? So you have learned the structure of the cell from past many years. So how does a plant cell look like? What is the structure of the plant cell? Okay. The outermost layer is called as? The outermost layer of the plant is? It is the cell wall, and then inner to the cell wall there is one more layer which is called as the plasma membrane. Which is called as the plasma membrane. And then inner to the plasma membrane is the region which is filled with the cytoplasm, and we call that cytoplasm is the main arena of the cellular activities, right? So everything, every enzymatic action, every component, everything which is required for the survival of an organism or a cell is happening inside the cytoplasm only. So we call it as the main arena of the cellular activities. So all which is there inside here, this is all the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm. Now, inside the cytoplasm, what all is present? So, firstly, we'll pick up the major structure or the main component of the plant cell, that is a large single vacuole, right? So, large single vacuole is present like this. Very conspicuous vacuole. Very conspicuous large single vacuole is present in the plant cell. So now this is the vacuole. Now another important component which is present in the cytoplasm is the nucleus. Is the nucleus. Now coming to the nucleus, we will label the parts one by one. The outermost layer of the nucleus is the nuclear membrane. In between the nuclear membrane, here and there are some pores present, and these pores are called as the nuclear pores. Nuclear pores. Inside the nuclear membrane, there is a matrix. There is a matrix which is called as nucleoplasm, which is called as a nucleoplasm, and inside in the nucleoplasm there is chromatin structure, which is the genetic material. So this is the chromatin. Chromatin is genetic material, DNA or RNA, but however this is DNA in case of the plants. Okay, and then we have one thick constriction somewhere in the corner of the nucleus. So here there is a space, so I am writing it here. Okay, so what is this thick constriction called as? This thick constriction is the nucleolus. It is the nucleolus. Now all these together will form the nucleus. All this together will form the nucleus. Now, outside the nucleus, coming external to the nucleus, attached to the outer nuclear membrane is double layered, right? So you can see double layer, one inner layer, one outer layer, right? Attached to the outer layer of the nuclear membrane, so there is endoplasmic reticulum present. Okay, so we can see it in two forms. One is it can be in the form of a rough endoplasmic reticulum, right? Rough endoplasmic reticulum means there are ribosomes present on the endoplasmic reticulum, or it can also be in the form of a smooth endoplasmic reticulum, that is without any ribosomes. So either it can be rough endoplasmic reticulum or it can be smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So I am writing it here as smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and here this is rough endoplasmic reticulum. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum and rough endoplasmic reticulum. Now, attached to this, okay, so attached to this rough endoplasmic reticulum or smooth endoplasmic reticulum, one more structure is present. And what is that structure called as? Attached to this, one more structure extends, which is a part of the endomembrane system, and that is the Golgi complex. So here this structure is the Golgi complex. Now, from the Golgi complex, some small vesicles which are there here external to the Golgi complex, they get pinched off from the Golgi complex and they come out as one more cell organelle. ಈ Golgi complex ಇಂದ ಓಕೆ ಗಾಲ್ಗಿ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಈ ಇಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಕೆಲವು ಸಣ್ಣ ವೆಸಿಕಲ್ಸ್ ಈ ತರ ಹೊರಗಡೆಗೆ ಬಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಹೊರಗಡೆಗೆ ಬಂದಿರೋದನ್ನ ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಗಾಲ್ಗಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಯೂಲ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, ವೆಸಿಕಲ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಅವುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅವುಗಳು ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಹೊರಗಡೆಗೆ ಬಂದು ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗನೆಲ್ಲೆ ಆಗಿ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ದೇ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಒನ್ ಸೆಪರೇಟ್ ಆರ್ಗನೆಲ್ಲೆ ಅಂಡ್ ದಟ್ ಆರ್ಗನೆಲ್ಲೆ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ದಮ್ ಆಸ್ here and there we get to see them and those are called as lysosomes. Those are called as lysosomes. So namge endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosomes, vacuoles, this is all the endomembrane system, right? This is an endomembrane, part of the endomembrane system. So these are the lysosomes which have, what are these? Which have the hydrolytic enzymes present in it. So lysosomes ಒಳಗಡೆಗೆ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ? Lysosomes ಒಳಗಡೆಗೆ hydrolytic enzymes ಇರುತ್ತೆ. So we know the concept of the suicide bags, right? So we call them as a suicide bags. ಯಾಕೆ suicide bags ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ if there is anything which is unwanted in the cell, okay, if there is anything which is unwanted, for example there is some material here which is not required by the cell, so now this material is taken inside the lysosome. Idenagatte, this goes inside the lysosome and here these hydrolytic enzymes means what? Peptidases, carbohydrases, nucleases, lipases, all these are the hydrolytic enzymes. And the job of the hydrolytic enzymes, the function of the hydrolytic enzyme is to break down the molecule. So now when it comes inside, this is completely broken down by the hydrolytic enzymes and it is been completely gone. Okay, so killing, suicide of any material is done here in the lysosomes. Now in case the whole cell is only damaged, okay, in case the whole cell is only damaged, we don't want that cell only. So in that case what will happen is all these lysozymes will burst themselves. ಎಲ್ಲ ಲೈಸೋಸೈಮ್ಸ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ? ಬರ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ತನ್ನನ್ ತಾನ್ ಬರ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳುತ್ತೆ. ಬರ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಾಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಇರೋ ಈ ಹೈಡ್ರೋಲೈಟಿಕ್ ಎನ್ಸೈಮ್ಸ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ದೇ ಕಮ್ ಎವ್ರಿವೇರ್. when the lysosomes burst themselves, all the hydrolytic enzymes will spread across the cell. ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. And hydrolytic enzymes can cut down any material, right? So they'll cut down the whole cell into pieces. The whole cell is gone. So it is as good as suicide of the cell. Yes, it is a suicide of the cell. So that is why we call the lysozymes as the suicide bags of the cell. Okay, lysozymes. Then what else will be present? I'll write here. What is this structure? Mitochondria. Mitochondria, right? And then we have one more such structure called as what is this? Chloroplast. Chloroplast. And then we get to see some small structures like this. What are these? What are these? Ribosomes. Ribosomes. And then we get to see here and there, we get to see, what is this? What is this? Cytoskeleton. This is cytoskeleton. Okay. And then apart from this, is there anything left behind? To see it once. ನೋಡಿ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಉಳಿದಿದೆಯಾ ನಾವೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೀವಾ ನೋಡಿ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ನೋಡಿ ಏನಿವು here and there some small vacuole like molecules or organelles are spread out across the cell. What are those called as? Microbodies. Those are the microbodies. So this is a structure of a cell and the components of the cell. Okay. So most of the things are basics which you have already learned in the previous semesters. So nimge ivaga syllabus alli enide, I'll be teaching that. Whatever is there in the syllabus, I'll be teaching that parts in detail. So remaining parts, if you want any basics about the remaining structures, there are videos already uploaded on the channel. Okay, so I'll give you the channel link. You can just go through, and if you want the basics of these structures, you can just watch that. Okay, so now for the syllabus, we have the cell wall present. So firstly, we will start it from the cell wall. Okay, clear with this? You just wrote it down first.